Manila at night is not elegant. It's not polished. And that's exactly why it grabs you. The traffic never really settles. Neon leaks into side streets. Jeepneys, tricycles, bars, KTVs, convenience stores, half-lit corners, loud music, and people moving like the night still has unfinished business. That's Manila after dark. The first time I stepped into the city's nightlife, it felt like entering a place that doesn't bother explaining itself. It just throws everything at you at once and expects you to keep up. And here's the problem. Most people waste their first night here. Because Manila nightlife is not one clean entertainment district. It's several different zones, shaped by different eras, different crowds, different expectations, and completely different energy. Some are easy for first-timers. Some are fading relics. Some are more private, more closed off, and much easier to misread. So in this video, I'm breaking Manila down properly. No fantasy, no fake travel guide polish, and definitely none of that generic nonsense from people who spent one night here and suddenly think they understand the city. We're going zone by zone, what each area is really about, who it suits best, what changed, what still matters, and where people get the whole thing wrong. And yeah, if you're planning to explore this yourself, check the links in the description. I've put together a custom Google map that makes navigating these areas way easier. If this kind of breakdown saves you from wasting your first night, hit like now. And if you've got your own Manila stories, keep them ready for later. I want to hear in the comments which district you think still matters most today. Manila has always been a city that never really sleeps. But its nightlife story started long before neon signs and KTV lounges. Back in the early 1900s, one of the first organized nightlife zones was in Sampaloc. By 1903, it was already thriving. By 1918, that system was shut down, and the nightlife scattered, reshaping itself again and again across the city. And that's how the modern map was built. Over time, 4 names came to define Manila nightlife. P. Burgos in Makati, the easiest place for first-timers to understand. Ermita, once one of the city's biggest nightlife names, now mostly running on old reputation. Malate, still active but more private, more closed off, and much easier to misread. And the old EDSA entertainment complex, once massive, now completely gone. But they don't work the way most people expect. That's the thing about Manila. Nothing here stays the same for long. And that's exactly why we're breaking this down properly. Because each district works differently, attracts a different crowd, and gives you a completely different kind of night. So stay with me. Now let's get into what each area is actually like today. If you're looking for the most accessible nightlife zone in Manila, the one that's easiest to understand on your first night out, P. Burgos is where most people start. It's compact, loud, and constantly moving. A tight strip where venues sit right next to each other, music spills into the street, and the energy doesn't really drop until sunrise. Step in from Makati's business district, and the contrast hits immediately. From clean, high-rise towers to a dense nightlife corridor where everything feels closer, faster, and more intense. This is the part of Manila that's the most visible, the part everyone sees first. And inside that strip, you've got a few different layers. Locally, some of these venues are labeled one way, but in practice they operate more like performance-focused nightlife venues. Dim lighting, loud music, stage presence, and a strong focus on atmosphere. Some places lean more polished, more structured, more presentation-heavy. Others lean into a faster, more unpredictable energy, where things feel looser and less controlled. Spots like Lips, Marquee, or Firehouse all sit on the same street, but the vibe shifts depending on where you step in. That difference matters more than people expect. What makes P. Burgos easier to handle than it looks is that it's not just one type of venue. Right in the middle of all that noise, you've got places where you can step out, reset, and slow things down. Filling Station Bar and Cafe is one of those spots that breaks the rhythm completely. A retro 1950s-style diner filled with memorabilia, neon, and a totally different atmosphere from the street outside. It's where people go to regroup, grab food, or just take a breather from the intensity. And if you want something more laid back, Pasha Grill and Shisha Lounge offers a slower pace. hookah, drinks, and a more relaxed setting away from the constant movement. That contrast is part of what makes Burgos work. Now here's the part most people underestimate. Burgos moves fast. Conversations start quickly, attention shifts quickly, and the pace of the night can pick up before you even realize it. And that's where a lot of first-timers misread the situation. What feels casual at first can change once you sit down, order, or stay longer than expected. So the smartest move here is simple. Don't rush it. Take a minute. Read the room. Watch how the venue operates. Because in Burgos, awareness beats confidence every time. If you want to move away from the strip and into more traditional club energy, Makati has options just a few minutes away. Royal Club Makati brings a high-energy dance floor, strong DJ lineups, and a crowd that's there to party properly. The secret door is a different vibe, more underground, more intimate, more about atmosphere than scale. And this is one of those places where the night tends to go longer than you planned. And this is where the night often shifts gears. Burgos gets you started. The clubs take you deeper into the night. Because in Makati, things don't really slow down, they just change format. Burgos is the most readable nightlife zone in Manila. But what you see on the surface is only part of how it works. The patterns, the pacing, the way different venues operate, the small details that separate a good night from a frustrating one. That's the layer most people only understand after a few nights, or a few mistakes. That's also exactly the kind of stuff we break down inside the lazy Nomad VIP telegram. Not as hype, not as sales, but as a place where guys who actually live here or spend serious time here compare notes, share updates, and keep each other informed on how things really work on the ground. Because Burgos is easy to enter, but it's much harder to read properly if you don't know what to look for. Once upon a time, Ermita was one of the most talked about nightlife districts in Manila. This was the area people used to describe as non-stop. Busy streets, packed venues, constant movement, and a reputation that carried across the city. But that version of Ermita is long gone. Over time, enforcement tightened, businesses shifted, and the nightlife that once defined this district slowly faded out. What's left today feels less like a central hub and more like fragments of something that used to matter a lot more. If you're expecting a high-energy strip like Burgos, bright, packed, and easy to navigate, this isn't it. Ermita today feels quieter, rougher around the edges, and far less consistent. There are still a few spots holding on, but overall, the energy is nowhere near what it used to be. So if you only have a few nights in Manila, this probably shouldn't be your priority. But if you're curious, there is still something here to see. If there's one place that keeps Ermita on the nightlife map, it's Midnight Haven, still widely known by its old name, LA Cafe. This place has been around for years and it shows. It's large, a bit chaotic, and operates on its own schedule. While most venues in Manila wind down in the early hours, this one keeps going. Walk in during the afternoon, late at night, or even early morning, and you'll still find people inside. That alone makes it unusual compared to most nightlife spots in the city. The crowd is mixed: locals, expats, regulars, and people who are there mostly out of curiosity. And the atmosphere reflects that. It's loud, unfiltered, and not particularly polished. If you talk to long-term expats, they'll tell you how different this district used to be. In the 80s and 90s, Ermita was one of the main nightlife centers in Manila. Today, it's more of a leftover from that era. Not completely gone, but no longer leading the scene either. So unless you're specifically interested in nightlife history or want to see how a district changes over time, this is not where most people build their nights anymore. There are stronger, more consistent options in the city. And that's really the key takeaway. Ermita is no longer the main story. It's a chapter that hasn't fully closed yet. Right next to Ermita, Malate keeps the nightlife going, but in a very different way. Most people get this wrong. If Burgos is loud, visible, and easy to understand from the street, Malate is more private, more contained, and much harder to read at first glance. From the outside, it doesn't look as intense, but once you understand how the district works, you realize the night here just runs on a different format. This is where karaoke lounges, private rooms, and long sit-down sessions dominate the scene. It's a popular area for local regulars and regional visitors, and the atmosphere reflects that. Less street movement, more time spent inside a single venue. Forget Western-style karaoke bars. Malate's KTV lounges operate on a completely different level. Instead of open spaces with a shared microphone, most venues here are built around private rooms. Groups come in, settle down for the night, and stay in one place. Drinks on the table, music playing, and the atmosphere building over time rather than jumping from bar to bar. You'll often see tables set up for longer sessions, bottles, food, and a more structured environment compared to the fast-moving energy of Burgos. Areas around Mabini Street and Adriatico Street are where this setup becomes most visible. And this is where people unfamiliar with this style of nightlife often misread the situation. Because from the outside, it can look calm. Inside, it's a completely different dynamic. Another thing Malate is known for is the concentration of late-night massage businesses, especially around Mabini. And this is where awareness really matters. Not every place operates the same way. Some are straightforward and professional. Others clearly lean into a more nightlife-adjacent atmosphere. And the difference is usually visible if you take a second to look. Lighting, layout, how staff approach people outside. All of that tells you what kind of place you're dealing with. Malate isn't for everyone. It's less obvious, less walkable in terms of nightlife flow, and much easier to misunderstand if you're expecting something like Burgos. But if you understand how this type of nightlife works, more private, more room-based, more about staying in one place, then it can be an interesting part of the city to explore. And there you have it, Manila's nightlife zones broken down, no BS. From the street-level energy of P. Burgos, to the more private, room-based scene in Malate, to what's left of Ermita's old reputation, this city doesn't follow one single nightlife formula. And that's exactly why most people get it wrong. Manila is unpredictable, constantly shifting, and very different depending on where you actually spend your night. So if you've been out here before and think there's something I missed, a spot, a detail, or a district that deserves attention, drop it in the comments. I'm always curious what others are seeing on the ground. If you had one night in Manila, where are you going first? If you're planning to explore these areas yourself, check the links in the description. I've put together a custom Google map so you can understand how these zones are laid out and move around without guessing. And if you want to go one layer deeper, not just what places look like, but how they actually work over time, that's what the Lazy Nomad VIP Telegram is for. It's not about hype. It's not about selling anything. It's a community of people who actually spend time here, share updates, compare experiences, and help each other stay informed on how things really move on the ground. If this breakdown helped you, hit like. It helps more than you think. Subscribe if you want more real nightlife guides across Southeast Asia, because that's exactly what this channel is building. Thanks for tagging along with Lazy Nomad. Until our paths cross again in the neon-lit streets of Southeast Asia, keep exploring, but always keep it lazy. Good night, and see you on the next adventure.